The White House has announced which gun policy changes it will support after last month's deadly mass shooting in Parkland, Florida. The administration announced a plan to arm teachers and other school personnel on Monday. But President Trump seemed to go against some of his earlier statements about potentially raising the age limit to buy certain firearms. The White House has also clarified conditions for a meeting with North Korea, saying that Kim Jong-un's regime cannot carry out any missile or nuclear tests in order for talks to happen. For more on this, let's bring in Niall Stanage. He is a White House columnist for The Hill, and he joins me now from Washington. Welcome, Niall.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So before we get to all of that, I want to get first to a developing story. Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee say they've found no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. How significant of a development is this for the White House?
Well, it's something that the White House will clearly seize upon. It builds on President Trump's preferred narrative that there is no collusion, that he has done nothing wrong. That aside, though, I don't think that this is going to come anywhere close to finishing this controversy. We already know that Democrats on that committee are going to push back very strongly against this finding. And of course, this is a completely separate probe from Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who is continuing to forge ahead with his investigation into possible criminality.
Turning now to gun control, some say the president appears to be backtracking on his proposal to raise the age to purchase certain firearms. There are also questions about the president's support for strengthening background checks. Is the president changing his mind?
He is on the age limit issue. I mean, he had made quite clear that he wished to raise the age limit for buying rifles. There was a meeting, which you may remember, at the White House, where he essentially reprimanded lawmakers for suggesting that they were too close to the NRA. Now we have him pulling away from anything that would especially aggravate the NRA. The age limit issue, he now talks about looking at what how the courts will rule on that, saying that there's no real public support. So there is definitely a backing down on that issue, even though he is making efforts in other areas.
Well, the White House unveiled its plan to reduce gun violence at schools. The plan proposes training for teachers and other school personnel. That plan is facing sharp criticism from a number of education groups who say it's dangerous and does not do enough. Why is the White House still trying to move forward with this?
Because the White House, in essence, argues that schools, when they are gun-free zones, make an inviting target for people with malevolent intention. You're quite right in your question in that teachers' unions and other groups are very opposed to this arming teachers idea, but the White House has repeatedly talked about the idea of hardening the target when it comes to schools. That was a phrase that the White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, mentioned again today, and so that is how the White House sees it, as making schools, providing more of a deterrent against anyone who would want to shoot up a school.
Let's talk about North Korea. The White House has outlined a number of conditions that must be met by Pyongyang before talks can commence. On CBS This Morning, Monday, Eurasia Group President and CBS News Senior Global Affairs contributor Ian Bremmer said that there are some concerns about the way President Trump went about announcing his intentions for talks. Let's listen to that.
The South Koreans bringing this offer to Trump, they were not suggesting, hey, go and meet with him right away. They're actually concerned. The Japanese, our best allies, who they thought that Trump was doing a hard line, which the Japanese supporting, suddenly the Japanese completely blindsided by Trump accepting a meeting. You want to have your allies on board. That means the Japanese and the South Koreans. You also want your allies inside the administration on board. And Trump, a good job getting to this point, an abysmal job because he's going it alone.
Niall, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Ian obviously has a particular point of view. I mean, I think that there is concern both within the American foreign policy establishment and among American allies about the fact that the president essentially agreed on a whim to become the first serving US president to meet a North Korean leader. Now, the White House would say that basically President Trump's attitude toward North Korea has paid off in terms of the pressure he's previously applied, and they believe that he does get things by trusting to his instincts. I mean, obviously that's a matter of personal opinion to a degree, but I do take the point that Ian Bremmer raised there, which is that for allies it is a problematic approach to take, that you try to do things quite so quickly.
What about for the U.S. and President Trump? How big of a risk is this?
The risk, I think, comes from the idea that the North Korean leader could simply take a meeting like this as something that bolsters his prestige, that puts him on a similar level to the President of the United States, and the US doesn't get anything in return. A lot of this is premised on the idea that the North Koreans are at least welcome or open to entertaining the idea of denuclearization. There's a good deal of skepticism about whether that's the case. If that doesn't happen, then I think the President could be in a very difficult position.
Finally, Niall, in an article for The Hill Monday, you called Tuesday's special congressional election in Pennsylvania the moment of truth for President Trump. How high are the stakes for the president?
They're very high. I mean, this is a district that he won by 20 percentage points in 2016. So if the Republican loses there, I think that is a very ominous sign for the GOP. It could even accelerate some Republican lawmakers toward the exit in terms of retirement if they feel that there is really a very big tide against the Republican Party. If a Republican holds on, Mr. Saccone wins that seat, then obviously it gives President Trump bragging rights, even though at the outset of this whole campaign, of course, we would have expected a Republican to win fairly comfortably.
All right, Niall Stanage in Washington for us. Niall, thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.